Today's format is slightly different. We just thought that, talking about doing business in Federated Nepal, there's been lots of discussions. We did an economist meet nearly a year back. Before, as I said, before the panel discussion, we've put together a publication. It's called Doing Business in Federated Nepal. A couple of years back, we had another publication called Doing Business in Nepal. So we said, let's try to put the discourse around federalism in a positive frame and something that we can carry away. So when you leave this room, there'll be a nice map you can carry. But before that, I would ask my colleague, Samriddhi Pant from Nepal Economic Forum, who has been worked nearly tirelessly for nearly a year to put this together. And it's been designed by Big Stone Medium.
So as we all know, after the constitution was instated in 2015, Nepal was declared as a federal democratic republic, and the country was divided into 7 provinces and 753 local bodies. This is the outcome of political federalization, but along with political federalization also came economic federalization. So this publication in particular was an attempt to serve as an investment guide to the potential investors for doing business. Also, with federalization came a lot of opportunities, as the local bodies and provinces were empowered to utilize the resources for economic development of the region. There were also ample amount of opportunities that were created for business as a whole. So this publication is an attempt to help visualize those opportunities under the federated structure.
In Nepal, we do too many ceremonies. We said, let's not do ceremonies. So there is the NEF tweet that's going out, Doing Business in Federated Nepal, a flagship publication of NEF Nepal and Bead Management, launched by our panelists, who may I request them to come up. Secretary Baikuntha Aryal, Faris, World Bank, Lele Song from ADB, and Shankar Sharma. So the tweet is going out, and thereby this is launched. Thank you, Samriddhi. And I think as she walked you through the publication, we are looking at more from a positive perspective. And we will try to make this as interesting and engaging as possible. I think we are very fortunate and honored to have a range of speakers from different backgrounds, very connected with the topic. Secretary Baikuntha Aryal, who took over as the first secretary of the National Natural Resources and Fiscal Commission. Of course, we've got Faris, who's been in Nepal for a couple of months, but also traveling quite a bit. Lele Song is Regional Economic Advisor of the South Asia Department of Asian Development Bank. And of course, Dr. Shankar Sharma, who's at the middle of doing a lot of work on federalism, leading the economic policy incubator. So opening remarks, maybe I would start about 5 minutes. Baikuntha-ji, I would start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sujeev, for the introduction. As you said, I had been traveling a lot, but I wonder whether I have enough stories to tell or not. But anyway, I'll just be trying to express some of my thoughts and some of my experiences so far. Probably the tourism is the end, but the major means is the connectivity. How you provide the connectivity to the tourism spot and so. For the tourism, just going through some of the examples here. For the tourism, I see 3 things. The number one, you have to have the tourist product. What do you have? And what do you want to sell? That's the tourism product. And then the second, you have to market it enough. And the third one is, how do you make it accessible? So that is the connectivity. When you have the vision, for example, when you have some business started, then the government would be active, and the regulator would be established, and all those things. And when the economic activities in the local level are increased, and then you have so many, the ideas and so many interventions over there to smoothen the business and all these things. Number one is that one. Number two, this constitution, if you just go through the line by line of the constitution, you might not see that. But again, the constitution is very clear that the local governments are the service delivery unit in the country, and the provinces are the main development actors. The second thing is, whenever people ask me about what are the major things that the investment can be poured into the countries, I always talk about TEAT, tourism, energy, and agriculture. Agriculture might not be of interest for all the development partners or the foreigners to invest in. But still, we have a lot of prospects in the agriculture sector. So why not iced tea again? Tea, that's my thing. Iced tea, people suggested. Why not the iced tea? So this is the area where we can intervene. So
thank you. So maybe I'll move on to Faris. Your opening remarks and your thought processes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sujeev, and thank you, colleagues. It's actually a pleasure for me to be here. Nepal, hopefully, and we are all working together, will no longer be a country where we talk about bringing investment money in, but we should talk about bringing long-term investment with long payback period. That's a really important issue. Now, for Nepal to meet its ambitions, and we all know this, achieving middle-income country, among others, this is the strategy embedded in Prosperous Nepal, Happy Nepali. Certainly by 2030, to achieve the MIC mixed status, middle-income country status, you need roughly about 7 to 8% GDP growth per year. To achieve that, you need about, currently investment as FDI's proportion of GDP is roughly 0.5%. You need to move it up to 10%. So you need to increase it by 20 times. Foreign investors don't care where you've been. They don't care where you're going. They want to put their money here versus somewhere else. So the decision to them is where to put the money and why Nepal should be different. That brings us then to the need to develop a narrative. So I have something called the 3 Ps, which is policies, procedures, and precedents. Policies in the World Bank, through its support to the government of Nepal, is really focusing on supporting the government as it really does the extremely necessary work of putting in place the right policies for an investment. Precedents. Investors at the end of the day want to see implementation of these policies and execution of these policies by committed, permanent, and really capable civil servants who are actually able to execute them. And the last one is the 3 Ts. Well, the second to last one, 3 Ts. To add to the 3 Ps, and that is transactions, transactions, transaction. It's not all about the private sector. It's not all about FDI. It's about inclusive growth. And it's true that the new policy actually added temporarily some steps and led to a drop. But ultimately, it led to the enhancement of the well-being of workers, of private sector, of labor. And that probably, if it took a hit on the doing business, then good for Nepal. I think that was a good decision. So we need to balance growth with inclusive growth. That's it. Thank you.
So your opening remarks could be stories or some of the reflections on what Secretary Aryal and Faris had to say.
So I would like to go a little bit on the micro side of federalism and its implementation, especially the municipalities and provinces. They have enormous power, the mandate, responsibilities, and power to exploit the regional competitive advantage, local competitive advantage, develop the infrastructure, attract private sector, enhance the private-public partnership in those areas. I'll just like to give 5 points, action points. One is definitely inadequate staff. I think we have seen that story every day in the newspaper. The second problem is too much of transfer. These people don't want to stay there because they would like to stay in the central level. So we have seen stories like somebody was transferred 6 times in 1 year period. So, and the third is, what we found out from the field level is that the staff that is being deployed by the central government, mostly administrative staff. So they don't have the technocrats or technical staff. The second is definitely the capacity. So how do you help in improving the capacity? I think we talk about a lot of training and things like that. That's over there. Definitely they need training. But how do you solve that? I think at least we have to have... my formula is 1:5. Third action point, huge gap in terms of politicians' vision, the elected politicians' vision, and bureaucratic constraints. But my another point is, again, I think similar to what I said earlier, some positive aspects of coordination and cooperation. But that part, most of the municipalities, they don't think that the provinces exist. So provinces, what they think is that the municipalities in my province should work under me and under my jurisdiction. I think there are problems, so this also needs to be addressed. So 5 action points and 4 positive points. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we'll get a bit more of a regional and global perspective from Lele Song on these issues. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sujeev. And first, let me congratulate the publication of this book, Doing Business in Federated Nepal. And I think my talk probably follows this title, because doing business basically is about the private sector, market. If a state wants to get from a poor state, barbarism, to a state of opulence, then you need to the state needs to do three things right. One is peace. The second is easy taxes. Third is a tolerable administration of justice. So peace, I think it's easy to understand. So you have to have a peaceful environment for the market to prosper. And peace probably is more about the internal conflict. You should avoid internal conflict. The easy taxes, this is a statement not about the level of taxes. Actually, you should strengthen the capacity of the state to extract revenues from consumption, from income, then to let the state to have the capacity to deliver services and to build infrastructure. Then third is so-called a tolerable administration of justice. I think this is the legal capacity of the state. So the state, market, they rely on each other, and we really need to build up the capacity of the state. And for Nepal, now is the critical juncture. We need to give a really strong capacity for the government, to the government. Thank you, Sujeev.
Thank you. And I think I would go back to Secretary Baikuntha Aryal to talk about, you heard about a lot of issues on capacity. Where do you see the ray of hope, and where do you see in this 1 year, where has been some of the progresses that you're seeing that makes you hopeful?
As Faris, he reminded me my own acronym, this 3F plus C. The first F is functions for each tier of the government, and that is mandated and that is listed in the constitution itself. The second F is the functionaries. For the functions to be carried out, you have to have the very strong functionaries, and that functionaries, again, relates to the organizational structure, human resources over there, and like Dr. Sharma was talking about, whether it is only fulfilled by the administrative staff or the technical staffs and all these things. And then the procedures and everything for them. And then the third F definitely relates to the finance. If you have the functions and functionaries, and to work them better, then you need the finance. And that's what Lily Song was also talking about, the fiscal thing. And then the C, to carry out all these things, you have to have the capacity. And that's what your question relates to.
Yeah, actually, if you look at developed countries or successful middle-income countries, they are good examples. They are willing to invest in capacity. This is what the Secretary is talking about, the investment in capacity. So, but if you look at political institutions, then probably we can divide them into broadly three kind of political institutions: common interest, and redistributive, and weak political institutions. If political institutions represent common interest, then probably those political institutions are willing to invest in capacity. So I think Nepal, actually, back to your first question, can you see the ray of the hope? I see a huge ray of hope.
Thanks. Faris, you want to add something to what Lily said?
I'll give you in my typical fashion a very strange answer, and I say everything. Everything we do in some way builds capacity. I mean, we have to define capacity and what we mean. Are we talking about capacity for execution? Executing a project, in which case I can give you cases. But I think if we are here, and certainly we're here to have a discussion on Nepal's overall economic narrative over the long term, we need to look at a number of things on this. Many of the projects that focus on rural development focus on building capacity and certainly localizing capacity for development. Again, economic growth and economic development is one that has many actors. And here you have about 30 million people who should be involved in the development strategy of the country. You do have a lot of capacity. You just have to create the ecosystem for it to come back.
No, thank you. Moving. So, Dr. Sharma, like when you're talking about these municipalities that are doing well, any of the examples that we can use to say that this is how they built their capacity, or this is how they've been doing it? Anything that could be a very nice example on the ground that can be, sort of replicated or that we can learn from?
Yes, I think in some cases, I guess in some municipalities, they have some administrative officer, not the chief administrative officer, but second in line or third in line. They are very capable. If we can send one or two capable people in the provinces or the municipalities, that will change the ecosystem of that province and the municipalities. I saw more than 200 people attending that conference. They were all coming from the training institutions in Nepal. Good, young, who have the managerial skill and training skill. So why don't you use some of these people to train the people in the management and administrative area? The third one, I guess, when I see some of the problems at the local level, some of them are of technical nature. I think Faris was mentioning about public expenditure management. That's where they need some support. The fourth one, government wanted to send central government staff to provinces and municipalities. They failed. So now they are coming with some incentive system. So I think if we don't provide any incentive to the bureaucrats, especially for the senior people and like capable people, they rather would choose to leave the government rather than going to these places. So I think the incentive at this point of time from the government is very, very important.
Please, we are talking about 60 seconds so that we can have more questions. So I think the gentleman here.
My question is, when is it going to come about? One. And the second question is, now the local bodies have passed certain rules and certain laws. So, and the central and the state government hasn't passed. So my request to all of you, I mean, being in the opposition party, what we say, it's not going to go down too well, but I think the most important thing, the report of the Fiscal Bitya Ayog needs to come out quickly.
My question is, are we kind of overemphasizing the role of the state in private sector development and doing business?
So I have a very simple question. What comes first, capacity building or laws?
And your question about, without having the report of the Fiscal Commission, how all these things can happen, I know that the chaos and all these things, it's because of the lack of our report or something like that. Of course, it is true, and that's why the Constitution, it has been very clearly written about the roles of NNRFC, how it deals with the fiscal transfers, how it deals with the revenue sharing, how it deals with the the natural resources distribution and all those things. Right?
Private sector certainly has a very important role to play. Certainly, if Nepal wants to reach middle-income country status within the allotted time, 2030, it's going to need at least 7, let's say 8%, 8 to 9% of GDP growth. In order to get to 8 to 9%, we need to move from an FDI of 0.5% to an FDI of 10%.
Why we emphasize now more on the state, the role of the state, because probably the state has a binding constraint. If we can release these binding constraints, then the private sector can raise its productivity, can produce more income, then the state is able to extract more revenues, then to invest in capacity more. So I think this is why we emphasize more on the state capacity.
I guess I'll see three things: intention, and reform orientation, and willingness to help. So if there are three things associated with the decision maker or the person who is making the decision on behalf of the government of Nepal, I think you are done. So I think intention and willingness to help and reform orientation, I think that's what counts to me in terms of capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's been a very interesting discussion and very enriching one. We started with discussing on iced tea, and we talked about capacity of selling iced tea, the business ecosystem, and we've come a long way in terms of figuring out what are some of the issues. Of course, this is a discussion that is going to continue. We are not here to make conclusion, and I think definitely I'm not going to make an attempt to make conclusion, but this was an attempt by Nepal Economic Forum to bring in some sort of a different lens to look at the same discourse on doing business in Federated Nepal. Lots of activities coming up, and hope to meet up and see each other in the days to come. Thank you once again, and thank you for the team that put up this event together. And thank you, speakers.